Dad? Why did you stop talking?
I'm sitting still, bud.
You went quiet. You only go quiet when something's wrong. Dad, where are you?
Outside a building I'm not allowed to walk into.
Then don't walk into it.
Yeah. That's the problem.
It started 11 days earlier, at 11 at night, with a question from the back seat.
Dad, why is that man looking at Cassie's window again?
Reese had a thermal bag in one hand and a phone in the other, cutting across the cracked lot toward Building C, and he almost didn't look up because a driver who looks up at every window never finishes a shift. But Noah said again, and it was the again that did it, because a child does not say again unless he has already built a pattern. He looked up. The man stood in the seam between two porch lights where neither reached, and he was not doing anything, and he was doing it very carefully. He had chosen the one spot in the courtyard where a person could watch a lit second-floor window without being lit himself. His hands were still in a way hands are almost never still. 7 years fell off Reese's shoulders in one cold second because he did not just recognize the stillness, he recognized the man. He had written 11 pages about that man once. He had sat in a hearing room and said in careful professional sentences that this man should not be released, that the pattern was textbook, that someone would die. A board had thanked him for his thoroughness and let the man out on a psychiatric finding, and Reese had left the field the year after for reasons that were in a folder he still carried folded in his shirt pocket. The man's name was Dorian Fell, and Reese had put him away once with words, and words had not been enough. "Get in the car," Reese said. "Lock it. Now, buddy."
Dad? Why did you stop talking?
I'm sitting still, bud.
You went quiet. You only go quiet when something's wrong. Dad, where are you?
Outside a building I'm not allowed to walk into.
Then don't walk into it.
Yeah. That's the problem.
It started 11 days earlier, at 11 at night, with a question from the back seat.
Dad, why is that man looking at Cassie's window again?
Reese had a thermal bag in one hand and a phone in the other, cutting across the cracked lot toward Building C, and he almost didn't look up because a driver who looks up at every window never finishes a shift. But Noah said again, and it was the again that did it, because a child does not say again unless he has already built a pattern. He looked up. The man stood in the seam between two porch lights where neither reached, and he was not doing anything, and he was doing it very carefully. He had chosen the one spot in the courtyard where a person could watch a lit second-floor window without being lit himself. His hands were still in a way hands are almost never still. 7 years fell off Reese's shoulders in one cold second because he did not just recognize the stillness, he recognized the man. He had written 11 pages about that man once. He had sat in a hearing room and said in careful professional sentences that this man should not be released, that the pattern was textbook, that someone would die. A board had thanked him for his thoroughness and let the man out on a psychiatric finding, and Reese had left the field the year after for reasons that were in a folder he still carried folded in his shirt pocket. The man's name was Dorian Fell, and Reese had put him away once with words, and words had not been enough. "Get in the car," Reese said. "Lock it. Now, buddy." "Dad, what's car? Door locked. I will be 30 seconds. Dorian turned, unhurried, and saw him. And here was the thing Reese would replay for 11 days. Dorian did not look surprised. He looked the way a man looks when a chair he ordered finally arrives. He smiled, warm at the eyes, and his gaze moved once, deliberately, past Reese to the small shape in the back seat in the blue glow of a flashlight. "Long night," Dorian said. "That your boy?" Reese stepped into the sightline. "Have a good night." He carried the bag to a stranger's door and did not run, did not look back, because the one thing you never do is let a patient man know how loud your heart is. But he understood two things by the time he reached the car. The first was that Dorian was hunting someone in this building. The second was worse. Dorian had known Reese would be here. A man like that does not move into the one complex on a delivery driver's route by accident, and he does not fail to be surprised. "Dad," Noah said when he got in. "You knew him. Your face did the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you go still like when you're reading somebody. You did it at my teacher once. The mean one, before anybody knew she was mean." Noah watched him. "So who is he?" Reese pulled out of the lot slower than he needed to, checking the mirror, which was a thing he had not done in 7 years. "He's someone I met a long time ago, in the job I had before this one." "The job you don't talk about." "That's the one." "Was he nice in the old job?" "No," Reese said. He was the opposite of nice. He was the reason I have the job I have now. He glanced at his son in the mirror. He knew me first, buddy. That's the part I need to think about. Buckle up. Across the courtyard, in a ground floor unit with the blinds drawn, Dorian Fell was not asleep either. He was a careful man, and careful men keep records. He had recognized the driver too, of course. You do not forget the one person who ever read you correctly, the one who sat across a hearing room and described your interior life to strangers as though he had lived in it. Rhys Arden. The name had been in Dorian's own file for 7 years, on the page that recommended he never be let out. He had read that page more times than he had read anything else in his life. And now the man was delivering hot food in the same courtyard where Dorian had chosen to begin again. It should have frightened him. Instead, it felt like symmetry, like a debt arriving. The one man who could see him, reduced to a uniform and a thermal bag, invisible to everyone, believed by no one. It was almost too good. He opened a notebook and wrote, in his careful hand, what he had learned watching the driver watch the building. A son who rode along on late shifts. An ex-wife. A custody arrangement, fragile, the kind of thing a careful man files away. He was not a man who did anything quickly. He turned to a fresh page, and at the top he wrote the driver's name, and under it he began a list of the things a man like that could be made to look like, and the first word on the list was the easiest one, because the driver had already started doing it to himself. Stalker. Dorian had moved into the ground floor of Building A in March. Rhys had only picked up the Holloway route in October, when the driver who used to run it moved away, which was the kind of coincidence that was not one, if you believed a patient man could wait for a door to open and then walk through it. Over the next 4 nights, Rhys watched the way he had once watched men for the county, and wrote it down, because writing it down was how you turned a feeling into a fact, and a fact could save a life. Because the app made him photograph every drop-off, he found, scrolling back, that Dorian was in the edge of a dozen of his shift photos, always near Building C. He saved those, telling himself he was documenting a threat, not yet understanding that the same photographs in another hand would describe a man who could not stop pointing a camera at someone. And he found the clock. The young woman in Building C, the one Noah called Cassie, kept an ordinary week except for one night. On Thursdays, she closed at the restaurant where she worked and came home at 11:40, alone, on foot, from the far lot. 3 Thursdays running, Dorian had been outside at that exact minute, not approaching, just learning the timing to the second. Rhys had the dates in his notebook. He also had the next one. 9 days to Thursday. "You're doing the thing again," Noah said from the kitchen table, not looking up from his homework, "where you go quiet and your pen moves. You did it for 3 nights now. You're keeping track of me? You keep track of everybody. I learned it from you. I'm making sure I'm right before I do anything." Rhys set the pen down. "Being wrong about a person cuts both ways, bud. If I'm wrong, an innocent man gets treated like a monster. If I'm right and I do nothing, a real monster keeps going." "What? Would you bet a life on this one?" Rhys thought about a folded piece of newsprint in his shirt pocket, worn soft with handling, that carried a young woman's name he had not been loud enough to save. "I already know what it costs to be right and not be heard," he said. "Yeah, I'd bet a life." The morning after this driver spoke to him in the lot, Dorian called his attorney. He did not report a threat. That would have been crude, and crude things leave marks. He described, in a wounded and careful voice, a delivery driver who had begun to fixate on him, who photographed him, who lingered, who had been seen writing things down about a man simply trying to rebuild a life. He asked, in the tone of a frightened person, whether there was anything the law could do to protect a man in his position from that kind of attention. The attorney, who had built a practice on exactly this kind of grievance, said that there was, and began to draft it that same day, weeks before the driver said a single word to anyone official. That was the elegance of it. Dorian did not need to silence the one man who could see him. He needed only to make sure that when the driver finally opened his mouth, the words would arrive already ruined, so that the more urgently he told the truth, the more clearly everyone would hear a sickness. He built the trap and then simply waited for the driver to walk into it by doing the one thing a good man in his position would always do. Report it. 8 days to Thursday. He did it by the book because the book was all he had left, and because he needed a record that he had done it right. The building's re-entry coordinator was Marguerite Vance, 55, who ran the community programs from a converted unit on the ground floor of Building A. He knocked at 9 in the morning, showered and calm, a father in a clean shirt. "I need to report a resident. I think he's dangerous, and I think he's escalating toward a woman in this complex. She let him talk. That was the thing he would think about later, how she let him lay all of it out. The times, the pattern, the Thursdays, and took the pages when he offered them. And only when he was completely finished did her face settle into something he had misread as patience. Let me make sure I understand you. You deliver food. At night, you've been photographing a resident, writing down when he leaves, when he takes out his trash. She turned a page of the notes he had, God help him, just handed her. Do you hear how that sounds from a grown man about a person he's never been introduced to? Sure, all right. We've spoken once, Reese said. 6 words about a package. He asked if the boy in my back seat was mine. He watched that land on her and slide off. I know how the notes sound. Read them the other way and they're a threat assessment. That man has done this before. Do you know what it takes for a man to be released, certified, given a second chance in a world that wants to put him back in a box? Her voice was not cruel, and that was what he would remember. I watched the system grind my own son into powder over one bad year. I am not going to help a man with a clipboard do it to someone else. I'm not a man with a clipboard. I'm the man who assessed him 7 years ago and said in writing that he would do exactly this. And I was right, and it didn't matter, because a room decided the rules mattered more than the reading. You keep saying you were right. Do you hear that you're describing yourself the way people describe a grievance? I hear it. I've heard it in my own head for 7 years. He leaned forward. Ms. Vance, ask me anything about him. Ask me how he'll choose the night. Ask me why he borrows sugar before he does anything else. I can answer, in detail, because I've read 100 of him, and the fact that I can answer is either the credential of an expert or the symptom of an obsessive, and you have already decided which, and that is the trap, and he built it. Something flickered in her then, but it was not doubt. It was pity. She stood and squared his pages into a neat stack and did not give them back. There's already a petition, Reese, she said quietly. A protective order. His attorney filed it yesterday. I wasn't going to tell you because I hoped you'd hear yourself today and stop. She held up his notes. And now you've handed me the one thing it was missing. I'm going to give a copy to his attorney. That's the procedure. That's what transparency means. Her voice did not waver, and that was the unbearable part. I'm doing this correctly. Marguerite. He stood too. If you hand those to his lawyer, you are not being transparent. You are handing a predator a map of exactly what the one person watching him has figured out. You're telling him what I know. I'm following the procedure I have followed for 30 years. Then your procedure is about to help a man kill someone, and you're going to have done it in perfect good faith. And that is so much worse than if you were corrupt. She paused at the door, just for a second. Then she went and walked out with his handwriting in her hand. The attorney sent Dorian a copy of the driver's notes because discovery runs both ways, and because there was no reason not to. Dorian read them at his kitchen table, slowly, the way he read everything. They were good notes. Clean, dated, specific. In another life, he and the man who wrote them might have understood each other, being two people who saw patterns where everyone else saw noise. He felt something almost like fondness, and then he set it aside, because fondness was not useful. Near the bottom of the second page, the driver had written a line about his own son riding along on the late shifts, a note to himself about custody, about why the boy was in the car. Dorian read that line twice. Then he took his own pen and underlined the name and sat looking at it for a while. Noah, 7 days to Thursday. The note was under his wiper the next morning, where he would have to touch it to drive his son to school. Stay away from him or we go to the court about your boy. He was still holding it when Marguerite crossed the lot toward him, not triumphant, but sad, which was so much worse. That's not a threat, she said. That's me trying to save 2 people at once, and you're too far inside it to see you're one of them. There's a copy of everything going to your ex-wife's attorney. A father under a protective order, accused of stalking. They have to look at it. She had the grace to look away. I'm sorry, if it were anyone but you. 6 days to Thursday. That night, Noah found them at the table with 2 things laid out that the boy had never seen. An old laminated card, worn white at the corners, that he could not read in the dark, and a scrap of newspaper, folded soft, that his father rested a thumb on the way you touch a headstone. Who's Renata? Reese did not answer right away. Someone I was supposed to be right about in time, he said finally. And I was right. I just wasn't loud enough. How can being right not be enough? Because being right isn't the same as being believed. Nobody teaches you that. He put the newsprint back in his shirt pocket over his heart, where it lived. Back then, it was my job to say who was safe to let out and who wasn't. I said no about a lot of men. Most of the time they listened. 2 times they didn't. He was quiet a moment. The first time, a young woman named Renata paid for it. She trusted me to protect her, and I was right about the man. And it didn't matter, because the room decided the rules mattered more than my reading. And the second time? The second time was the man at Cassie's window. Reese looked at his son and did not lie to him, because he had promised he never would. I said no about him too. They let him out anyway on a doctor's note. Renata was the price of the first time nobody listened. Cassie is about to be the price of the second. He held the boy's eyes. Except this time, I get something I didn't get with Renata. I get to be here. I get a second chance to make somebody listen before instead of after. That almost never happens, buddy. A man almost never gets to stand at the exact same cliff twice. Outside, across the courtyard, the light in Dorian's ground floor window went on, then off, then on again. 3 beats. Reese watched it and did not know yet that he was watching a habit, and that a habit, once you have seen it, is a clock you can read in the dark. The emergency hearing came 2 days later, and it was the 90 minutes he had been dreading since the note appeared under his wiper. He stood in a hallway that smelled of floor wax with Noah beside him. "They're not going to keep you, right?" Noah asked, holding the flashlight in both hands. "They're not deciding that today, buddy. Today they decide something smaller, and it's still gonna feel big. Sit here, don't wander." A clerk with a gentle voice called his name, and he went in alone. The family court referee had a stack of files and a few minutes for each. She read the words photographing and logging in repeated proximity, and the line about a minor child present in the vehicle after 11 at night, and looked at Reese over her glasses in a way that dropped his stomach through the floor. "I'm not deciding custody today, Mr. Arden. I'm deciding whether there's enough here to be cautious while it's sorted out. And there is. A protective order, a stalking allegation, and a child riding along at midnight. I'd be failing that child if I did nothing. He rides with me because I'm his only parent and I work nights. That's not danger. It's poverty. I understand poverty, Mr. Arden. I see it every day in this room. But you understand I can't put poverty on one side of a scale and a stalking allegation on the other and hand you the child. There's no allegation. There's a threat assessment written by the man who's now accused of it. Read the notes. They're the notes of somebody trying to stop a crime, not commit one. I've read them. And I've read the petition. And what I have in front of me is a man who won't tell me the one thing that would explain why he can read a stranger's schedule like a case file." She waited. He said nothing, because the one thing was sealed. To explain how he could read Dorian Fell, he would have to say out loud, in open court, that he had recognized and identified a protected reentry client from his professional history, which was not exoneration. It was a confession that he had been surveilling exactly the man he was accused of surveilling, using exactly the training that made him good at it. The truth was the trap. His qualification was indistinguishable from his guilt. That was the whole design. That's what I thought. Belief isn't my job today. The record is. She signed something. Your son stays with an approved party during your shifts until this is resolved. If the allegations hold at the full hearing, we revisit custody entirely. 3 days a week supervised starting now. 3 days. It was not the loss of his son. It was worse, the shape of the loss arriving one finger at a time. They took Noah's nights, the drives, the flashlight on the ceiling, the only hours a night shift father got with his boy, and called it caution. Noah didn't cry when Reese explained it in the car. He went very still, which was worse. "You always say you'll fix it." "I always mean it." "I know." Noah looked out the window. "That's why I'm scared." The company pulled Reese off the Holloway route the day the order came down, which meant that from then on, every night he spent watching that courtyard, he was a man with a stalking order sitting in a parked car across the street from a complex he was ordered to stay out of, for no reason a court would ever accept. Delia Odom, when she came, would be the only person alive who knew he was there, and the only reason it was not a crime. Across that same courtyard, Dorian opened the calendar on his wall and put one finger on the coming Thursday, already circled, and beside it, in small, careful letters, he wrote a single word: finish. He had all the time in the world. He had waited 7 years for the one man who could see him to be standing on the wrong side of a line, unable to move, unable to be believed, watching. That the man would be watching was, if anything, the point. Some things are only worth doing in front of the one person who understands them. 4 days to Thursday. It happened on a supervised evening, which was the cruelty of it, because Noah was in the car for the handoff and saw all of it. Reese had pulled to the public curb across from Holloway to wait for his ex-wife to collect the boy. "You okay?" she asked through the window when she pulled up. She looked at his face. "You're not okay. What's wrong?" "Take him, please, right now." She followed his eyes across the street and did not understand what she was seeing, and took Noah anyway, because she had learned a long time ago to trust that particular tone in his voice. And as she buckled the boy into her own car, Cassie came up the far path with her grocery bags, and Dorian was there, holding the lobby door with his soft, apologetic smile. "Thanks again for the sugar," Cassie said, and smiled at the kind, harmless neighbor, and did not glance once at the delivery driver frozen across the street and went inside. She had no idea she had just thanked the man counting the days until he hurt her, in front of the only man who knew, who was legally forbidden to say a word. Dorian turned. He crossed the courtyard, unhurried, and stopped exactly where the property line met the public walk, 1 inch short of it, a man who knew precisely where the edges were. "A cold night," he said pleasantly. Then his eyes moved, deliberately, past Reese, through the windshield to the boy in the passenger seat. He held them there. "Terrible thing. What happened to that young woman all those years ago? Renata." He said the name gently, still looking at Noah. "They didn't listen to you then either, did they? You said the true thing and nobody heard it and someone died." He smiled. "History's a funny shape. It likes to close. Every muscle in Reese's body wanted to cross that line. That was exactly what it was for. One step, and Dorian had his stalker on video, and the boy was gone for good. And Dorian was still looking at Noah. Reese did not step. He took out his phone, and without breaking eye contact, he called a save number and said clearly, "Ms. Odom." Dorian Fell just crossed his approved contact radius to speak to me, and he's looking at my son. Timestamp it. 11:04, logged, Delia said in his ear, reading it back off her own screen. "He's on record crossing his radius. That's the first crack in him. Keep it." Something flickered behind Dorian's pleasant face then, because a patient man hates nothing so much as a man who refuses the bait and aims past him instead. "Have a good night," Reese said, and did not move, and went around by doing nothing at all, with his hands shaking on the wheel. "Dad," Noah whispered after Dorian had gone. "He looked at me." "I know. Why did he look at me? He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to you, but he looked at me the whole time." Reese did not have a version of the truth small enough to give him, so he gave him a different true thing instead, because he wanted me to be scared. And the fastest way to scare a dad is to look at his kid. He turned in his seat so Noah could see his face. "Listen to me. He is never going to be near you. I promise you that with my whole life. But I need you to do something for me, and it's going to feel backwards." "What?" "I need you to go with your mom tonight and not be brave about it. I need you somewhere he can't reach so that I can do the thing that stops him without worrying about where you are. Do you understand? You being safe is what lets me fight. That's not me sending you away. That's you helping." Noah thought about it, the way he thought about everything, seriously. "Okay," he said, "but you have to call me. Every night, even the hard ones." "Every night," Reese said, "especially the hard ones. If you already know what you would have done the second that man looked at your kid and said her name, put it in the comments now, before you hear the rest. Then see if you still mean it at the end." It was later, going back over every piece, that Reese saw the whole shape of the thing, and it was worse and cleaner than he had let himself imagine. He had been thinking of himself as the target. That was vanity, and vanity bends the reed. So he made himself do the cold arithmetic one more time, and the answer turned his stomach, and he needed to say it to somebody with the power to act. He called the county reentry oversight office, and after being transferred twice, reached an investigator named Delia Odom. "I had it backward," he told her. "I thought he moved against me to get me out of the way. He didn't. He used me. I'm the only person here who can see what he is, so instead of silencing me, which draws attention, he did the patient thing. He took my own vigilance and turned it into a stalking story." "Meaning what exactly?" "Meaning from now on, everything true I say arrives already poisoned. The more I warn people, the crazier I look. He didn't need to get rid of me. He needed everyone to stop listening. Those are two different jobs, and he chose the quiet one because he's good, and the quiet one is quieter." "Slow down. Who is this?" "I'm the delivery driver in a protective order your office is about to rubber stamp. 7 years ago, I was the risk assessor who recommended against releasing the man who took out that order, His name's Dorian Fell. Pull his file. My name's in it, on the page that said don't let him out. There was a silence on the line. That's a very specific thing to know, Delia said finally, in the flat voice of someone who has just felt the floor of a routine case drop away. It's specific because it's mine. I wrote the assessment. I sat in the hearing. I watched them let him out. And now he lives on your route. Now he lives on my route. And I'm the one in a protective order. And a woman is going to die on a Thursday unless somebody who isn't legally radioactive reads the file I can't touch. He kept his voice even. Most people say he gives them a bad feeling. I'm telling you his method, his timeline, and his target. Because I graded him once, and I was right. And being right is the only thing I have ever been good at, and the only thing that has ever failed me. There was a long silence on the line. Who did you used to be? Delia said. Somebody who thought the paperwork would be enough. By the end of the week, the whole complex had a version of the story, and every fact in it was true, and every meaning upside down. There was nothing to correct. It all happened. A man from Building B stepped in front of him once on the walk. Shoo. You're the delivery guy. From the petition. My wife's scared to take the trash out at night now. Because of you. The person your wife should be scared of isn't me, Reese said. I wish to God it were. It'd be a much easier problem. Yeah, they all say that. The man walked off. Someone spray-painted a word on his car. He was on his knees in the lot with a rag, scrubbing it off before the supervised handoff so Noah wouldn't see it, when he realized the letters had been sprayed at a child's height. 3 days to Thursday. Delia Odom met him in a diner 2 towns over and put a thin folder on the table without opening it. I read it. 7 years ago, you recommended against releasing Dorian Fell. Called the escalation almost to the week. They overrode me twice in the same year. Once on Dorian Fell, who walked out on a psychiatric finding. Once on another man, whose file I'd flagged just as hard. 9 weeks after that second release, the other man killed Renata Voss, the colleague I was mentoring. He met her eyes. So I stopped being able to tell the difference between being right and being complicit, and I quit, and found a job where nobody could tell me to stand down again. And then Fell moved on to my route. He didn't find me by accident, Ms. Odom. He came looking for the one person who ever read him correctly to make me watch him do it again. You understand that if you touch his sealed file, everything you say becomes poison. A stalker mining his victims' records. They'd love that. It closes the whole case. I know. That's why I haven't. That's why I'm sitting in a diner 2 towns over instead of doing the thing every instinct I have is screaming at me to do. Which is, go get him myself. I know exactly how. I could have him in a position no lawyer could talk him out of by tomorrow night. He said it flatly, and let her see that he meant it, and then let her see him set it down. And then I'd be the stalker they already say I am, and my son would grow up visiting me. So no, I'm going to sit on my hands and tell you where to look, and trust a system to be faster than it was last time. That's a lot of trust from a man the system just failed twice. It's not trust, it's the only move left that doesn't cost me my son. He held her eyes. Can you be faster? That's the whole question. Not whether I'm right. You already know I'm right. Whether you can be faster than a room full of people were 7 years ago. I did that once. It cost a life. But the other way costs me my son. He slid the folder back, untouched. So yes, go read it. I'm begging you to be faster than they were. Thursday. Whatever you're going to find it before Thursday. It's slow, Delia warned him on the third call. I want you to hear that from me before you hear it from silence. I can't just pull the sealed data because you asked. I have to build a reason, file a request, wait on a supervisor who's on leave, and route around a program that has every institutional reason not to look. Because if he's reoffending, they signed off on a killer. Because a rehabilitated man is a win, and a rehabilitated man quietly rebuilding toward another crime is a lawsuit and a headline and a dozen careers. The machine does not want to look, Reese. I have to make it look, one form at a time. A pause. So I need you to not do anything stupid while I do that. Tell me you're on the sidewalk. I'm on the sidewalk, he said. And I want you to understand what it costs. Every night I sit here and watch him get one step closer and do nothing, because the second I move, I lose my son. I already broke myself once obeying a rule that got a woman killed. I don't know anymore which obedience is the sin. Going quiet is the sin. Not staying on the right side of a line and aiming me at the truth. You're not standing down. You're aiming me. Keep aiming. I'm almost there. A pause. How long? 2 days to Thursday. That was a supervised night, and when the handoff came, Noah would not get out of the car at first. He sat with the flashlight in his lap, not turning it on. "If I go with Mom," he said, "and something happens to Cassie, and you are sitting outside, not allowed to help, is that going to be like Renata?" Reese shut his eyes. "I'm trying very hard to make sure it isn't." "Sure. You always say do the right thing even when it's hard." Noah finally looked up. "Is this the hard one?" "This is the hardest one. Because if you help Cassie, you break the rule and lose me. And if you keep the rule, Cassie's like Renata." Noah said it plainly, a 10-year-old laying out an equation. "There's no answer that doesn't cost something." "No, there isn't." "So what are you going to do?" Reese looked at his son, at the smart, frightened eyes behind the glasses, and told him the truest thing he had. "I'm going to find the answer they didn't let me have last time. I'm going to be the eyes and let somebody else be the hands. And I'm going to stay exactly where the rule says. And I'm going to make them listen before instead of after." He touched the boy's cheek. "Go with your mom. Keep your phone on. I'll call you the second it's over." He watched his son walk to another car and understood that Dorian had already taken the thing that mattered most, one supervised night at a time, and had not needed to touch him to do it. Thursday came. Reese was parked at the public curb across the street, on the phone with Delia, when at 11:12 he watched Dorian cross to the C stairwell, ease the service door open, and wedge a folded piece of cardboard into it so the lock could not catch. Cassie was due home at 11:40. Dorian had given himself 28 minutes on the landing. Then he stepped inside. Into the half landing the camera did not reach, and the courtyard went quiet, and every alarm Reese owned began to scream. Second floor. Kitchen light on. Cassie 4 minutes from walking home into it. His old phone sat on the dashboard on speaker, the one he kept in the glove box for the nightly call because it was the only way he was allowed to have his son near him after 9 now. Noah was at his mother's. The goodnight call was still open on that old handset when the world tipped over. His work phone, the one with Delia's number, was in his other hand. "Dad, are you still working?" "I'm sitting still, bud." Reese kept his voice level, the old professional calm, the calm he used when everything was on fire. "I need you to stay on the line and not be scared. Can you do that?" "Okay." Reese had one hand on the door handle and did not pull it, because here was the trap with its jaws finally shut. One step onto that property and he was a stalker who violated a protective order, and he would never see his son again. Stay on the sidewalk, and a woman 4 minutes from home walked into a stairwell with a man on the landing. Last time the system had ordered him to stand down and a woman died. This time it was ordering him to stand down again. And then he found the third road, the one his training had been screaming under the panic. He did not have to cross the line. He had never needed to be the hands. He had spent a career being the eyes. The mistake 7 years ago was not that he stood down. It was that he had handed his reading to a room, gone silent, and let the room decide the timing. "Delia," he said into the phone, and his voice changed, went flat and fast and certain. "Stay on this line and do not hang up no matter what I say to my kid in the background. I'm about to be a set of eyes for you, and you're going to move on what I see, and we are going to be faster than a room this time. Are you with me?" "I'm with you. Talk." "Delia." He propped the C stairwell door. "That's a movement violation right now. Tonight, on your own monitoring. He's on the half landing where the camera doesn't reach." "How do you know if you can't see the landing?" "Because I know his tell. An hour ago, the light in his ground floor window went on. Off, on again. 3 beats. The same pattern I clocked the night my son first noticed him. It's not nerves. It's a man running his checklist before he moves. He's not on the walk, not at his unit now. The propped door is the only place left. I'm reading the negative space, the same way I read his whole life on paper 7 years ago." He watched a figure in a windbreaker turn the far corner of the lot, on foot, a grocery bag in each hand. His chest went tight. "She's early. Delia, she's early. It's 11:36 and she's already in the far lot. That's 4 minutes, not the 28 he planned for. Then we move on 4 minutes. When she badges the front door, he goes to the stairs. That's your window. Not before, or he talks his way out of it, not after. Not after what? You know what? Roll now." And then Delia Odom said the words he had waited 7 years to hear from anyone with the power to act. "I believe you. They're rolling. I'll take the weight." They rolled. 2 units came in without lights. Delia's people behind them with the sealed file already open to the page that mattered. The page with the movement logs. The page that would hold even against a good story. because it belonged to the very program that had been protecting him. And Reese stood on his side of the line, with both feet planted on the legal side of it, every muscle begging to move, and narrated a killer toward a stairwell in a calm voice while his 10-year-old listened on a dashboard speaker. "Dad, what's happening? Your voice is weird." "There are police, bud. Good ones. They're going where I told them to go." "Are you helping?" "I'm helping the only way they'll let me." He watched the units move across the lot in the dark. "You know how you read the dark with your flashlight? You don't grab the dark. You just point the light where the thing is, and you let somebody see it. That's what I'm doing. I'm the flashlight." "That's a good way to help," Noah said with total seriousness, and Reese had to press the back of his hand to his mouth. "People are getting there in time, bud," he managed. "For once, people are getting there in time." Dorian Fell, who had built his whole life on the certainty that the one man who could see him would never be allowed to speak, stepped out of the half landing at the exact moment Reese had said he would, into the exact spot Reese had named, and found people already there. He had been so certain the driver would be forced to watch in silence that he had never considered the driver might simply refuse to be the hands and pick up a phone instead and be believed. "Well, we have him," Delia said in his ear, and he heard it before he understood it, and then he heard it again. "Reese, we have him. She's fine. She walked in the front door 30 seconds after we did. She never even saw him. We have him." He did not save Cassie with his hands. He saved her by being believed at last in time. They brought Dorian out the front of Building C in cuffs along the public walk, and the route took him within 20 feet of where Reese still stood, exactly where he had been the whole time, not 1 inch across the line. Dorian slowed. He looked at Reese's feet planted behind it, and for the length of a breath the pleasant mask was gone, and something under it worked at the arithmetic and could not make it come out. "So, you're not going to move, are you?" Dorian said. It came out low, almost wondering, and it was the first thing he had ever said to Reese that was not calm. "Even now, you could see the whole thing coming, and you just stood on your side of a painted line and let a phone do the work." "No," Reese said. "I didn't move. You spent 7 years betting I would, and you never once believed a man could hear his own kid on a phone and still stand still. 7 years. The certainty was gone out of it now. I waited 7 years for you to be standing right there, unable to do anything but watch. That was the whole point. You were supposed to move." "I know," Reese said. "That was always the difference between us. You needed me to be the hands." He did not step forward, and he did not look away. "I was only ever the eyes." They walked Dorian on, and he did not look back, and Reese stayed exactly where he was until the last car was gone. It did not clear him all at once, because that is not how it works when a system has already written its story. But the program's own data belonged to the people who had been protecting Dorian, and it was sealed, and it said what it said. The movement violations, weeks of them, logged by sensors that did not care who was sympathetic. The contact pattern with the resident he had no approved reason to know. A propped door on a Thursday night. Delia laid it before an oversight panel, not as Reese's word, but as the program's own record. Delia called him the morning the panel ruled. "It's their own record that sank him, not your word. I read them the movement logs, the propped door, the timeline, and I watched a room full of people who did not want to believe you lose the ability not to. You were right, Reese. On the record, in time. I need you to actually hear those last 2 words, because I don't think anyone said them to you in 7 years." Reese stood in his kitchen with the phone against his ear and could not answer for a moment. "In time," he finally said, trying the words. "Yeah, that's the part I stopped believing was possible." Dorian Fell's psychiatric release was revoked within the month. He went back inside on the original sentence with the new charges stacked on top, and the number the judge read out was longer than the years he had been free. The protective order against Reese collapsed. The custody petition was withdrawn and a correction was entered, which is a small, dry phrase for a thing that gives a father back his life. Marguerite Vance came to see him before it was over. He almost didn't let her in. "I don't have anything to say to you," Reese said. "I know. I came to say it to you." She stood in the courtyard, hands deep in her coat pockets. "I read the whole file, yours and his. I spent my life making sure no one else ever became my son, ground up by a system for 1 bad year. And I never once checked whether the frightened man in front of me was the frightened one, or the dangerous one wearing frightened like a coat." Her voice was not steady. "I handed a killer's lawyer your notebook and called it procedure." A woman came 4 minutes from paying for my correctness. Sure, you were trying to be merciful, Reese said, and found he meant it. Mercy just has to look at the right person, or it's a weapon pointed backward. You looked at the man who could perform being hurt, instead of the man who was going to do the hurting. He's very good at being pitied. It's the only trick he has, and it's enough, because most people never learn to look under it. So, they're putting my program under review. She said it without self-pity, a fact set down between them. 30 years, and it ends because I did the one thing I built it to prevent. What was his name? Your son? She looked up, startled that he'd asked. Daniel. Daniel would not have wanted a woman to die so that his mother could keep proving a point about mercy, Reese said. That's not what you were protecting. Somewhere in the last 30 years, you stopped protecting people and started protecting the feeling of having been right about them. I know exactly how that happens, Ms. Vance. I've spent 7 years doing the same thing from the other side. Then run it again someday, Reese said. Pointed the right way. Your son would rather that than a monument. She flinched at the mention of the boy and nodded once and went. 5 weeks after it began, he was back in the same hallway that smelled of floor wax, and this time the door opened onto the ordinary miracle of a judge saying the correction into the record, saying there was no basis, saying Reese Arden would keep full custody of his son. No gavel bang, no crowd. He got a quiet room and a tired judge and a piece of paper that told the truth this time, and it was everything. Nobody wrote about it. A reporter called once, having caught the thread of a strange story about a delivery driver and a foiled attack, and Reese said no, and to the second call said no again, because standing in front of a camera being called a hero would have meant standing forever beside the version of himself the court had almost believed. He only wanted to go home. Noah was waiting on the courthouse steps, and he ran the way 10-year-olds run, all elbows. Did it work? Did the judge listen? The judge listened. Before or after? Reese crouched and held him. Before, buddy. This time somebody listened before. So you get to keep me. I get to keep you. Reese's voice did something it did not usually do. That night at the kitchen table, Reese took the old laminated card out of his pocket, the risk assessor's badge he had carried folded against his chest for 7 years, like a wound he would not let close. He looked at it a long moment. Then he set it down on the table, face up, and did not put it back in his pocket and left it there, because a man does not have to carry the proof of the time nobody listened once somebody finally has. Noah pressed the flashlight into his hand, the small one, worn smooth, that he took everywhere. You should keep this for a while, for the night shifts. I've got the truck lights, bud. You keep it. No, you need it more. You read people the way I read the dark. Noah closed his father's fingers around it. But even I like having a light, just in case the dark reads back. Where'd you hear that? Nowhere. I just thought of it. He tugged his father's hand. Can we go home now? You look like you could sleep for a year. I think I might, buddy, Reese said, and for the first time in 7 years, he meant it, and they went home. Toward a night he would, for once, sleep all the way through. Marguerite Vance never took a bribe. She never lied. She spent 30 years protecting people the system had chewed up, and she was proud of it, and she should have been. She also handed my notebook to a killer's attorney and called it transparency, and a woman in Building C came 4 minutes from paying for it. So tell me, does she keep her job? Comment yes or no, and I'll read everyone.